Hey guys, South Bay Investor here. So on this video, guys, I want to talk to you guys about the Reconstruction Finance Corporation. Um, it was passed in January 1932 by Herbert Hoover administration, and it was basically they called it a bailout for the rich. This was obviously after the 1929 crash. It was like the beginning of the Great Depression. And what it did is that it basically lent money to the businesses that were struggling or that were hit very hard by the Great Depression. Businesses like railroads, insurance companies, banks, were all lent money to be able to stay afloat and not go out of business. Eventually, it was closed down, I believe, in 1953. It was absorbed by the Department of the Treasury after it had already lent out at about $50 billion. So that was the Reconstruction Finance Corporation. Herbert Hoover passed it, but Franklin D. Roosevelt, when he was elected, he adopted it. So it was actually one of the good things that the Hoover administration did prior to him being out of office, because it really helped businesses, the big banks and the insurance companies not declare bankruptcy. So it was again like a bailout for the rich companies, the companies that needed it. So when these times that we're going through now with the people are talking about bailing out the airlines and how wrong that is. Government has always had organizations that are too big to fail, and it's probably cheaper for them to bail them out than it is to let them go bankrupt, and the repercussions and ramifications that would ensue if these companies went bankrupt. So the RFC, as it's known, 1932, guys, was just an example of a bailout that the government did back in those days after the crash of 29, at the start of the Great Depression. And with these airlines and giving money to the airlines and the other big businesses that need it right now during this pandemic that we're going through, it's really nothing new, guys. We did it also in 2008 with the financial crisis, of course. Bailed out the big banks, the insurance companies, the auto industry, General Motors, Chrysler. There was also another bailout that was given. Well, this wasn't really a bailout, but the government back in I think it was like 1990, also created something called the Resolution Trust Corporation, where it basically absorbed a lot of the losses from the savings and loans of the 1980s and the savings and loans that went bankrupt. The government ended up with a lot of assets from these companies, and they had to liquidate them, and it was kind of like a garage sale. They were selling them for very cheap. I don't know how many cents on the dollar, but it was very cheap. I know guys like Steven Schwartzman from the Blackstone Group took advantage of that situation when Blackstone was just starting out back in the 80s. So that was another period where it was different than the RFC, because the RTC was more of a liquidation sale that the government was having. And with the I'm gonna sit down a bit. With the RFC, it was more of a lending to the companies that needed it. With the RTC of the 90s, it was a liquidation sale. And also there was another bailout back in I believe it was late 70s or mid 70s, when Lee Iacocca from the Ford company he went to the government to help bail out Chrysler. They call these bailouts, but they're really just the loans to these companies, which Chrysler did in the end pay back to the government. And the government ends up making a pretty good return on their money. So sometimes these bailouts work out pretty good for the government. Actually, most times they've worked out pretty good for the government. So it's kind of like a loan that they give them, with an interest rate, a promise to pay. And most of these companies do pay them back. And it helps everybody out because it helps the taxpayer, because that's the government. They make a good return on their money. It helps the company that was bailed out and given the money. And so that's a little bit on the bailouts, guys. But the main thing I wanted to focus on is the RFC, the Reconstruction Finance Corporation. Again, passed in January of 1932 by the Hoover administration. And it really helped out big businesses back in the day during the Great Depression. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this bit of history. I'm the South Bay Investor. Have a great day. Bye.